Good morning, everybody. Welcome. We are so happy to have you here. Thank you for all coming to your seats and welcome to the people attending virtually. My name is Megan Jaravic, and I am a shareholder at the law firm of Von Briesen and Roper and the co-chair of DMI's board of directors for a few more months. So you get to see me for a little bit here. Thanks for joining us for August What's Up Downtown Breakfast. I promised John that I would stay on script today, so I'm going to read very carefully for you all and make sure we don't forget to thank anybody who's here. We're excited to be live in downtown Madison. I can tell you, Chief Barnes, we're happy to have you here, and you definitely do not want to be someone who has to speak on like the last really nice summer day. So we made sure that you didn't have any competition today. It's raining outside. We're all happy to be in here listening to you instead. So for today's event, we are pleased to welcome Chief Shon Barnes from the Madison Police Department as our monthly speaker. We had originally planned to have Chief Barnes join us a few months ago, but the weather was too nice and we rescheduled for today so you could all enjoy your time here with him. Before we hear from the chief, I'd like to recognize some new DMI members for the month. Joining DMI recently, we have a great list for you. 100 Black Men of Madison, Inc., a nonprofit organization with the mission to improve the quality of life within our communities and enhance educational and economic opportunities for all, represented by Floyd Rose. Breeze Terrace Group, LLC, a provider of real estate services, including market research and feasibility, site selection and entitlement, and related real estate development services, represented by Barry Perkle. Designs to Thrive, an organization to help understand and use universal design to create more flexible, friendly living spaces. It's a place to get ideas, share ideas, and give ideas for making living spaces easier, safer, and more beautiful places to live and thrive, represented by Jane Nemke. Festival Foods, a family-friendly grocery store operating stores throughout Wisconsin with a location right on East Washington Avenue, represented by Jake Donahue. Landlord Council, LLC, a law practice representing commercial real estate owners and managers in commercial real estate transactions, including acquisitions, dispositions, financing, leasing, and property management matters, represented by Chan Stroman. Lithosphere, LLC, a multi-purpose infill developer providing more comfortable and sustainable living and working environments, adding characters to cities in primarily Dane County, represented by Jason Iverson, and Preston Tolkien, a non-business resident member. So thank you to all our new members this month. We're excited to welcome you to DMI and look forward to seeing you at our events and your involvement and participation in our organization. Please join me in a round of applause for all of our new members. Next, we want to make sure that you get your phones out to mark your calendars and silence them at the same time. Calendars for some great opportunities, downtown Madison events brought to you by Madison Central Business Improvement District. Be sure to check out your downtown movie night featuring the movie Encanto this Saturday, August 27th, starting at 7:45 p.m. in Lisa Link Peace Park. Your final lunchtime live concert of the summer happening next Tuesday, August 30th from 12 to 1 on the lawn near South Hamilton walkway of the Wisconsin State Capitol. And then next Madison Night Market. If you haven't been yet, these events are so wonderful. It's a great gathering of people downtown and a wonderful place to do some shopping. So the next Madison Night Market is on State and Gilman Streets in downtown Madison on Thursday, September 8th from 4 till 8. To find a full calendar of the upcoming events in downtown Madison and the bid events, check out the BID's website, which we have posted online and up on the screen. Next, to continue with the program, I would like to thank and recognize our sponsors for today's event. The What's Up Downtown series is made possible by the generous partnership DMI has developed with our major series sponsor, Carlson, Black, O'Callahan, and Battenberg, LLP, which you definitely know is a law firm by that name. We are pleased to have Carlson Black as the major sponsor of this event and greatly appreciate their ongoing support of DMI and downtown Madison. The What's Up Downtown series is also made possible by our supporting series sponsors, Ho Chunk Gaming Madison, State Bank of Cross Plains, and TDS Telecom, as well as special contributors, the Edgewater Hotel, I saw Amy here this morning, and UW Health, Unity Point Health, Meritor, and Quartz. We thank these sponsors for their generous contributions and for help making this morning's event possible. And finally, thank you to today's rotating monthly sponsor, JP Cullen. We greatly appreciate JP Cullen and their support of today's program and are pleased to welcome Justin Buchholz, Operations Manager of JP Cullen, to say a few words. Welcome.
Good morning.
Oh, his script is tiny.
Oh, yeah. So it's great to be here with you all this morning, whether in person or virtual, whichever flavor you prefer, rest assured you are in the right spot here this morning. As mentioned, my name is Justin Buchholz, Operations Manager with JP Cullen. For those of you who are not familiar with Cullen, we are a construction management and general contracting firm working in education, healthcare, industrial, science and technology, multifamily, and commercial markets. We are a fifth generation family owned firm with offices in Janesville, Milwaukee, and just a few short blocks from here, right in the heart of downtown Madison on the Capitol Square. JP Cullen has an extensive history with the Madison community, going all the way back to 1925 and the addition to Bascom Hall. Over the almost century between now and then, which is just crazy to think about and even crazier to say, we've continued to build flagship structures in and around the city, including Van Hise, One West Wilson State Building, the Risser Justice Center, the 10-year renovation of the state capitol, Judge Doyle Square, many projects on the University of Wisconsin campus, and at Camp Randall, including the recently completed South End Zone renovation and the ongoing work at the natatorium replacement. All of those projects were defined by great partnerships, and we continue to foster a great partnership with the city of Madison. Most recently showcased by the restoration and historic renovation of the Madison Municipal Building and the ongoing renovation work at Olin Park and the Metro Transit facilities. And that last one is near and dear to my heart because I've been a resident on that project for over the last year, and it's been very powerful to witness the impact that a little bit of attention to some critical facilities and infrastructure to the city can have on the community, and Madison does a very good job of that. This morning's topic presented by Chief Barnes will highlight another one of those critical services provided by the city, and I am definitely interested in hearing more about it. So with that, I want to thank you for the opportunity to share a little bit about Cullen. Proud to be here as a sponsor of Downtown Madison Inc. and all the great work that you do to continue, making Madison the vibrant and bright community that it is in the future. So grateful to be here with you all and join in learning a little bit more about our Madison community this morning. Thank you.
Thank you. Good job. We just really appreciate the opportunity to have you here today. So thank you so much. It's now my pleasure to welcome and introduce our speaker for this morning's breakfast, Chief Shon Barnes. Shon Barnes was appointed as Madison Police Department's Chief of Police by the Police and Fire Commission in December of 2020 and started in February of 2021, which was an interesting time to start a new opportunity, I'm sure. Chief Barnes is a nationally recognized leader in crime reduction and community police relations. He was previously the Director of Training and Professional Development for the Civilian Office of Police Accountability in Chicago, Illinois. Chief Barnes was the Deputy Chief of Police in Salisbury, North Carolina from 2017 to 2020, and a captain with the Greensboro Police Department in North Carolina, where he began his career as a patrol officer in the fall of 2000. Chief Barnes was honored as a National Institute of Justice Lead Scholar for using innovative technology to reduce crime and is a council member of the National Police Foundation's Council on Policing Reforms and Race. Throughout his career, Chief Barnes has implemented neighborhood-oriented policing, which focuses on smaller police beat response, police neighborhood ownership, and community engagement at levels within the organization. Chief Barnes attended Elizabeth City State University, where he received a BA degree in history and pre-law, and then made the somewhat would say wise choice to not become a lawyer, and the University of Cincinnati, where he received a master's degree in criminal justice. He earned a PhD in leadership studies from North Carolina Agricultural and Technical State University. We are pleased to have Chief Barnes with us this morning to talk to us about the power of identity in 21st century policing. Following the presentation, we will be taking questions from the audience. For those in person, you'll just raise your hand and John will bring you a microphone. For those of you on Zoom, please use the question and answer feature, and to submit a question that John will answer or ask live here, and we'll get as many of you in as we can. So with that, please join me in welcoming Chief Shon Barnes.
Good morning. Good morning. You know, she's right. I didn't know what I wanted to be when I grew up, to be honest with you. I had so many jobs. I sold insurance for about 2 months. That was something. A company at the time called Jefferson Pilot. I don't know if you've heard of them before. I was a public school teacher. I'll talk a little bit about that, I think. And but my passion really was I wanted to be a lawyer. So I know there may be some lawyers in the room. You have to tell me what I missed out on, because you know, all I knew about lawyers is that everyone liked them. So we'll see if that's really the case when I talk to you one-on-one. I'm so happy to be here today just to share a few thoughts about my journey, my experience, and what I think is important now in policing more than ever. And that's really the power of identity and who we are and how those experiences shape the way we service our community. I am so fortunate, I really believe, to be here and to be where I am. I wake up every morning with truly a grateful heart because the people that I've met in Madison have been so welcoming to me and my family, and I certainly feel fortunate. I feel blessed, if I can use that word, to be here with you today and just to share a few of my thoughts. So what I thought I would do is just share a little bit about who I am. Normally when people invite me, they want to know really kind of two things, like what's your plan? Like, what is it that you're going to bring to Madison? Why this guy, especially if they never met me before? And then like, who are you? Like, who is this guy who is in charge of our public safety? So I think I'm going to do that today. And then I have a few things to share about downtown and some of the ways that we're working to keep you safe. I wanted to acknowledge a couple of people in the room before I get started. One is, of course, my good friend, Sheriff Calvin Barrett, who's here with us today. He is a good friend and mentor of mine, and I think he's going to do great things for the people in Dane County. I also wanted to recognize our captain, Harrison Zanders. He commands the what we call our central district, which is downtown. So he's personally responsible for your public safety. So if you can't reach me, he's probably going to be the next call that you're going to make. And he's an excellent commander. He's doing a great job of keeping you safe. And then, of course, a couple of people in the back, Charles Tubbs, who's a friend and mentor of mine, and of course, Dr. Floyd Rhodes, who's also a friend and mentor of mine. So I just want to acknowledge them first. Let's start off here. Let's see if I go the right way. Here we go. Let's take a look at behind the badge. I wanted to just give you a brief overview of who I am and this concept of identity. And we'll start kind of left to right, I think. The picture of the young man in the brown shirt with what looks like a mustache, my attempt to grow a mustache to make myself look older. I don't try to do that anymore, by the way, but at that time, I tried to make myself look older by growing a mustache. That was the first day I finished the academy. I started my policing career in Greensboro, North Carolina. I'd been a public school teacher for about 4 years, and it was a great experience. I absolutely love history. I still am a big history buff. But when I met my wife, she said, you know, I'm entering medical school at Wake Forest University. And I was like, well, you know, you could stay with me and I make $25,000 a year. And she said, yeah, but you could just move to Winston-Salem and be closer to me and let me finish medical school. So I made a good choice, I think. And I left history and became a police officer. I became a police officer because at that time, I believed that the identity of police were to actually help people and to do the right thing. I grew up in a neighborhood, my parents were young at the time, where we saw police when things were really, really bad. And so those persons who came in our neighborhood were only there really as almost like an occupying force. But there were two police officers who went to my church. And, you know, from the South, the Bible Belt, we go to church all the time, Sunday twice, Wednesday once, Thursday once, and then Saturday once, right? And these men would come to church and they would wear their uniforms. And they were just amazing people and everyone wanted to be around them, especially the kids. They were all deputies, actually. And so this was my first introduction to, I think, policing. And I'd had it in my mind that if I moved away from teaching, what would I do? What were the values that my parents had instilled in me? What was my true identity? And so I decided to apply. I applied to several police departments. I got them all. I just took the one that had the most money, and that was Greensboro. And I had an opportunity to really affect the lives of people in a positive way. I've always seen that as my identity, but it was not easy. I found that in many communities, especially communities of color and disenfranchised communities, there is this long-seated distrust of police, and I couldn't understand that. So, well, I look like you. I come from the same neighborhood as you. Why is it so hard to kind of break through? And then I started doing my research. I was born in 1974. In 1974, there were 400,000 people in prisons in America. Today, there are 2.3 million people who are in prison, and they all have families. And so we have to understand that in this profession, you know, our identity is shaped by the experiences of others and their experiences through linked faith and what they have seen in us. And that's something that I have absolutely never forgotten. But Greensboro was a great opportunity for me. They gave me an opportunity to learn while I was there. They gave me an opportunity to go and get a master's degree at the University of Cincinnati. And so I was just fortunate to be in a really great police department. Never really thought about being a police chief. I just wanted to do good work. And then again, today, I just want to do good work. I just happened to be the chief of police. And so I was there for a while and then had an opportunity to meet a gentleman who said, hey, I need help. My community is in turmoil. They had had a use of force where someone was killed during a no-knock search warrant. You've certainly heard of that before in the news. And I went and I helped him. And then they asked me if I would be their deputy chief of police. So I left Greensboro and went to Salisbury. So the second picture to the left, I think, is my brother and I. So my brother is a police officer as well. He's followed, I've tried to get him not to follow in my footsteps. My brother is what you may call academically gifted. He is super intelligent. I'm like, man, you got to go be an astronaut. You got to go, like, don't follow me. So he followed me to the Marines. So I'm a Marine as well. He followed me to the Marine Corps. He tested out of everything. And so in the Marine Corps, he was a paralegal for a JAG officer. And I'm like, dude, you can type. Like, what are you doing here? And so he followed me there, and he's still a police officer today down in North Carolina doing really great work. So I had an opportunity to work in Salisbury and put together some of the things that I'm going to bring, that we're bringing here to Madison, like stratified policing, like problem-oriented policing. Problem-oriented policing originated here in Madison, as you know, with Herman Goldstein. I had an opportunity to learn about Herman Goldstein as a young police officer, but I never met him. I booked a conference to meet him, and he was moving at the time and didn't make it to the conference. So I never got an opportunity to meet him. But one thing I really have enjoyed about being here is that everyone who's met Professor Goldstein has a great story about something he told them that really affected their view of policing. And so that's my background with Herman Goldstein. The picture at the top of me walking, that was in Selma, Alabama. As you know, 2020 was a rough year for policing. And in 2020, the identity of policing was greatly changed forever. The videotape murder of George Floyd change how people thought about policing. And for some people, it validated what they thought about policing. And although I know that did not happen in Madison, didn't happen in Greensboro, we know as leaders that policing is global. And what happens in one area of the country certainly will affect what happens here. And we have to know that. I had wanted to do the civil rights trail through Alabama for many years, but I just had not had an opportunity to do it. But after the murder of George Floyd, me and two other of my friends who are, one's a chief in Arlington, Texas, and one is an officer in Sacramento, was like, we have to do this. And so once the civil unrest in our cities and riots had settled down, we said, we got to go to Selma. And so we went to Selma, Alabama, and we spent the day at Brown AME Church, where John Lewis went, where Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. was a pastor. And we had an opportunity to sit and look through archives and photos about what happened in 1965 on the Edmund Pettus Bridge, a bridge that today is still named after someone whose claim to fame is that he was the Grand Dragon of the Ku Klux Klan. And on this day, John Lewis and others, including a young 26-year-old Army veteran deacon in the AME church by the name of Jimmy Lee Jackson, walked with people across that bridge to march from Selma to Montgomery. It's a 54-mile march from Selma to Montgomery State Capitol. And as we know, on that day, the police showed up, Alabama State Troopers, and their identity wasn't the identity that we know of right now. And we know that on that day, Jimmy Lee Jackson was shot and killed while trying to protect his mother from a baton strike. And that community was changed forever. I share that story with you because I needed to understand why we are disconnecting so much from our community, even as a Black man. And that journey, I had an opportunity, it took us 2.5 days to walk 54 miles. And on that walk, we had the opportunity to meet so many people, white, Black, male, female, truckers, cops, and everyone stopped to check on us, to see how we were doing, what's going on. It was raining, we were still walking, and it was just a powerful experience. And I learned maybe 2 things from that I want to share with you. The first thing is that America is not a divided country. So stop watching the news. When you get out there and you're on you have your sneakers on and you're walking, people stop. They don't care what your color of your skin is. They don't care about that stuff. They stop and they say, are you okay? Can I get you some water? You know, do you want to ride? Did your car break down? And there was no rhyme or reason to why they did that. Again, Black, white, male, Hispanic, it didn't matter. America is not a divided country, ladies and gentlemen. That is our identity. Now, the identity that you may see in the media and what people may tell you is totally different from our experiences there. And we were in the heart of the South in Selma, Alabama. The other thing that I learned is that police have not always defined justice in the way that we define it today. And if we ever forget that, we can never bridge the gap between trust between the community and the police. But that was an awesome experience for us. The picture at the bottom is my family. It's a little bit old, but my daughter to the left, she's our daughter to the left. She's our oldest. She's 25. She just graduated with a master's degree in fine arts from California School of the Arts in Santa Clarita. She's now a dance instructor at a performing arts school back in Winston-Salem, North Carolina. She's doing well. And so I'm glad she's out of school. I'm no longer paying for an apartment in California. I'm paying for tuition. She took a class, by the way, called Going to the Club in the 90s. And interviewed me as a test subject. I'm like, hey. But I was there. I had a lot of stories, but I was there. But she's doing well. My son, Aiden, he's 13, into basketball and has the attention span of, I don't know, of about 2 seconds. But he's a great kid. He'll be my lawyer. But he'll be a lawyer for the ACLU. I guarantee you that much. And then that's me in the middle. Our youngest is Addison. Addison is 11. She'll be a lawyer too. She'll be suing her brother. I'm certain of it. And then my wife is Dr. Stephanie Dance Barnes. As I told you, she's the smart one in the family. She's currently the dean of the College of Health and Science at DePaul. And my wife is a bit of history. I got to brag. She's the only person to graduate from Wake Forest with 2 PhDs because she's an overachiever. Cancer biology and toxicology. So my wife works to prevent breast cancer, and that is her passion. And so, I just honor her with saying that, anytime you get an opportunity to support breast cancer research, I can honestly tell you that your money is going to a good cause. A lot of people working to do that. The picture at the top is one that's very special to me. That's my mother in 1976. Does anyone recognize the background? Does anyone think they know where that is? That's Lake Monona. So I told my mother in 2020, I said, I got a call from a consulting firm wants me to put in for Madison, Wisconsin. They think I would be a good fit there. She was like, oh, Madison, yeah, we should live there. I said, what? So we did not. She's like, yeah, let me show you. So my uncle, and I always knew this, went to UW-Madison. He lived here his whole life. He lives now in Merrill, Wisconsin. I hope I pronounced that right. So he said it's about 2 hours north of where I am. And he was a pastor here at a church for some time. And I did not know that she came here when I was like 1 or 2 years old, I think. And she showed me that picture. And so I kept that. And I said, why didn't you stay? And she said, well, it's kind of tough. She was young and trying to get settled. So she took a Greyhound bus back to North Carolina where we lived. And she showed me that photo. So when I was sworn in, she came back and we recreated that photo. But, I think sometimes for me, I'm a man of faith. I hope that's okay. But sometimes, God puts you where he wants you to be. And it's not your timetable, it's his. Maybe it wasn't my time to be here in 1976, even though I was only here for a short time, but I'm here now. And my mother can come back anytime she wants, and she doesn't have to worry about money. So that's my story with that. The picture at the bottom is my father, and we're still talking about identity. So my father started out as a mechanic and then grew a pretty, I think, successful business. My father owned some tow trucks. We did record by rotation for the State Highway Patrol. But this is kind of how I remember my dad. He was always going to work. He passed away suddenly in 2018, but he was always going to work. So here's who I am through my dad. I'm in my home one day, and it's a summer day, and I hear this beeping, right? It's like beep, beep, beep. And I recognize that that's a backing up, when dump trucks or whatever back in. My dad wakes me up and says, come outside. So my father has purchased like all this land next to where our home was. And this is where he built his business to the day. He built it from the ground up. So this dump truck unloads all of this sand and all of this. And it's like a little round thing. He has it marked off. And my dad gives me a shovel. And he says, I want you to spread all of this dirt with this shovel by the time I get home. He got in his car. He went off to where he was working. He had a joint business with someone. And I sat there, the trucks leave, and it's like, I'm looking at this dirt and I'm looking at where it has to go. And I get the shovel and I start shoveling. One scoop at a time, one scoop at a time. Now, this is a part of the story where I should be saying, I learned something that day, that sometimes hard work is just one scoop at a time. No, this is not that story. I put the shovel down. I walked about a mile down the road, and I found a farmer. And I convinced this guy to let me have a tractor with the spade on the back. True story. And I literally drove that tractor. I didn't know what I was doing, but I drove that tractor down to my home or down to the space, and I spread all that dirt with that tractor and that spade. And my dad got home, and he was absolutely livid. He was livid because he was trying to teach me a lesson that sometimes it's got to be hard work, and it's got to be one scoop at a time. Well, downtown Madison, that's not who your chief is. When I see something that needs to be done, I get it done. And I use whatever opportunities or whatever that may be around to do it. If I got to ask for help, I'll ask for help. But I'm a person who can't wait. When we talk about policing and police community relations and crime control, we can't wait. Since 2020, violent crime has gone up exponentially in this country. And I'm here to tell you that Madison is not immune to that. Although we've seen some reductions in major crimes where we've been looking at, we still have our challenges. And I want you to know that you have the type of police chief that's not going to use a shovel to fix it. I'm going to go and get a tractor. That's exactly who I am. Now I'm going to do that through some strategy. And I'm going to do that through vision. For the first time in our history, we've crafted a vision for the Madison Police Department. It's very, very simple. It says the Madison Police Department will be the national model for exceptional policing through our commitment to three things. I think if we do three things, we will have the type of police department that you can be proud of. Hopefully you are proud of, but you will continue to be proud of. It's only three things that we're going to do. One, we're going to be selfless public servants. Two, we're going to have effective community partnerships. And three, evidence-based policing strategies, which I'll introduce in just a minute. But selfless public service is very, very important to me. As public service, we have to be selfless. We can't be selfish. This is not about me. This is not about the captain or the sheriff. I can tell you that we care about you. And you need to see that in everything that we do. Our presence here today demonstrates that we care about our community. And I will tell you this, I care a lot about the business community. I'm probably going to go off on a 30-second tangent, but there are people in this community that don't care as much about the business community for some reason. I don't know why. My father owned a small business. He wasn't, you know, J.D. Rockefeller, or he probably wouldn't fit in this group per se, but he employed some people. He had some very expensive machinery. And if someone were to set his building on fire, that's more than just a building, by the way. That's people's livelihoods and jobs that are destroyed. That's people's property that would be destroyed. So I do have a big heart for businesses. And when people say it's just a business, it's just a structure, I have a problem with that. And so I think we need to work a little bit to kind of bridge the gap between those people who don't understand that and those people who are business owners and understanding how business is a part of community. If you look at our website, under my bio, there's a line in there when I say community, business, and residential. And I hope people have noticed that. The other thing is community partnerships. Now, we all understand business, so we're going to be partners when we leave here, right? Which means that if we have a good quarter, guess what? We split the money. If we have a down quarter, then guess what? We all have a down quarter. And what we saw in 2020 after the murder of George Floyd is that the partnerships that we thought we had, we really didn't have. That was what we call a down year in policing. And some of our partners turned their backs on us. Some of our elected partners turned their back on us and said, this is all about police. I honestly believe that the civil unrest in 2020 were not just about the police. We are the public face of government. We're the most visible form of government. And in 2020, people were upset because they were tired of government not working for them the way it works for everyone else. So it was about more than just the police. And I understand that. And I think most law enforcement leaders understand that. And then evidence-based policing practice. If you go to the doctor and you have something wrong with your knee, you expect him to do something that the American Medical Association says you should do about that. You don't expect him to cut it off. That's not what we're going to do here in the Madison Police Department. We're going to make sure that our strategies fit and are tailored to our community. And there's about 30 years of research that we all know about. And I'll talk a little bit about that in just a second. This is one. So this is kind of how we work. So I'm getting into a little bit of strategy now, but briefly, policing been talking about this for a long time. And this is kind of how we look at property crime, right? It's based on some research called the routine activity theories. It says there are three things that have to happen at the exact same time in order for a property crime to occur. You have to have, number one, a place that's unguarded. You have to have a victim that's suitable, and then you have to have a motivated offender. The good news about this is you only have to affect one, but we try to work on all of them. And so, for example, one of the things that the captain has been doing in the downtown area is looking at what places concentrate people who are likely to be engaged in gun violence. What places are more likely to have people who are driving fast or traffic that brings in more people, and then we try to change the trajectory of that. And then targets, people rather, or victims. We try to tell people to lock their cars, but they don't do it. We try to tell people don't leave the valet key. I know we're all important, everyone does valet. Don't leave the valet key in your car when you're not there, because these guys are smart and they are girls. They know that if they break the car, they know where to look. They're going to look at the visor. I can look at your faces and see if they're in there, but they look at the visor, they look inside the cup holders for these keys. And we tell people not to do that, because if you can make those targets a little bit harder, it makes it more difficult for people to steal your property and to lock them up. Case in point, about 3 weeks ago, the officers were on routine patrol in the downtown area, and someone had a vehicle that was parked on the street with a gun in plain view. Now, I don't know if they were just intending on hiding it, or they just thought that, they forgot. But what does that do to someone who's looking to be motivated as an offender? That puts another gun on the street. And so the officers were able to get in the car and seize that and try to figure that out. So there's a lot that's going on that we're trying to do. And so the last one is motivated offender. Now, that's on us. We can reduce someone's motivation to be an offender through mentorship, through apprenticeship, to giving them jobs, to investing in the community. And I like that I see that here in Madison. I think if someone needs help, there are people who will help them, and that reduces their motivation. And also, we reduce motivations too by our presence. We do something downtown called the COPA patrols. And what that means is we know that if we go to a particular area and we do something interactive for about 15 to 20 minutes, when we leave, that area remains safe for probably about another 2 hours. And then we have a structure, a system in place that we return within that 2 hours to do something productive as well. What that does is it cuts down on over policing. And number two, it puts our officers out doing things that are proactive and positive in our community. Our policing philosophy here in Madison is called stratified policing. It was developed through some research and analysis, where you take all the things that really work and you kind of simplify them, and then you stratify them, meaning you tell people specifically what it is that you want from them. And the first, obviously, is problem solving. I mentioned Herman Goldstein. He was absolutely brilliant. And so we do that here. We have summer strategic plans that you've probably heard about in the news. The captains have wrote those, and they're implementing those now. I think we're doing a great job on those right now. Our shots fired are down, incidents of shots fired are down 15.3%, because it just came out last night. And so we're looking at reducing those by 15%, and that's a big number. Actually, 10% is probably realistic, but the gold standard in policing is 15%. Basically, it says that it's not due to chance. So we're doing well on that. Our stolen autos continue to be up, but we had that surge in thefts from Kias and Hondas. If you take out Kias and Hondas, we're probably right where we need to be. But I have been told that in October, Hyundai is going to issue a recall, and they're going to fix the glitch in their system that made it so easy to quote unquote hotwire a car, which, I don't even know how to how do you even learn that? And I asked YouTube. Can you believe that? YouTube. And so, technology being used for not so good. Crime analysis is something that we do. We get data constantly, and then accountabilities. We want to hold each other accountable. These are our goals for 2022 that we're working on halfway through. We're prioritizing crime prevention, community engagement, as I spoke of, and employee safety and wellness. When our employees are safe and healthy, that's mentally as well, they perform better for you. And that's exactly what we want. We have mental health days for our officers where they are required to speak to a clinician unless they have their own. and then they get the day off to reflect on what they learned. And I think that's something that we will certainly continue, if not expand. I talked about being a national model for exceptional policing. That's something that we're working on as well. The idea of police reform by definition is we need to have a police department that's reflective of the needs of our community, both residential and commercial, as I stated before. We need to be able to understand data just a little bit better. We do have some struggles there. I've recently hired a director of police reform, data, and innovation. His name is Dr. Lee Hunt. He'll start October 31st. He was in town last week, purchased a home online. And so he met with the owners and he absolutely loved it. They made a deal. And so he's very, very excited about coming here as well. He's an amazing criminologist. He's actually nationally known as well. And interestingly enough, his wife actually works for Epic. So it's kind of great. She's working remotely, but now she's close to that. So I think that's great. Engaged communities impacted by disparities. There's probably not a day that goes by that people don't talk to me about disparities, especially those people who don't understand our identity, who think that we are a repressive force. And so we have to work on that. And I think the key is understanding how to measure disparities. My PhD dissertation was in racial disparities and traffic stops. And there's some things that I learned from that experience that I want to bring to Madison, because we have to be able to measure it and explain it correctly. And then lastly, I think is our summer strategic plan that we have in full effect now. We'll do a press conference on that at the end of the summer, which for us is October 31st. Someone said it should be, probably won't be summer for me, but I think that we're on the right path there. We're working extremely hard in the Madison Police Department. We are a different police department than I think we were several years back. We've learned a lot since 2020. We have a group of dedicated men and women who are doing the right thing, and they're doing the right thing for you. And I really appreciate the opportunity just to share a little bit about who I am, our vision, what we have going on here in Madison, and how we're trying to keep you and your business safe, how we're trying to keep your customers safe, and certainly, most importantly, how can we work together? How can we partner together in order to make Madison one of the safest cities in America? So that's my talk, and I appreciate you.
Okay. Questions. Okay. That was so amazing. That time just like flew by, didn't it? Thank you so much for being here and for all you do for Madison, for all the police department does for us downtown and in the community. We greatly appreciate your partnership and work to keep our entire downtown and city safe. So thank you. We'd like to open it up now for questions from the audience. Again, for those of you in person who'd like to ask a question, just go ahead and raise your hand and John will bring the microphone to you. Wait for the microphone, please, so the people online can hear you as well. And for those on Zoom, please use the question and answer function to submit your questions, and we'll see if we can get to as many as possible. So, anybody have questions in the audience?
We do have one virtual
Okay.
question in here from Peggy Gunderson. She's with Strategic Brand Marketing and also the chair of the DMI Quality of Life Committee. And she asks, well, she starts, "Good morning, Chief. Before the question, she'd like to recognize and thank those in the room who work with DMI's Quality of Life Safety Committee. Their communication and partnership have been invaluable in strengthening downtown Madison." Her question is, what type of training do MPD officers receive for when approaching folks with mental illness?
Yeah, it's a good question. Probably second to domestic violence training, our mental health training is probably where we receive the most training, and it's ongoing training. Recently, we've gone through the integration, communications, assessment, and tactics training. It's called ICAT. It is a empirically based, nationally recognized training out of the Police Executive Research Forum. And so that training kind of puts together scenario-based training of what to do when you are encountering people with mental health. I will tell you that our police department has probably more hours of mental health training than most people working in mental health, because for us, we are 24/7. And so we get not only real life, real world training, but we get classroom training, we get the ICAT training, we get a defensive tactics training, which is not about putting your hands on people, but it's about how not to put your hands on people. And so I feel good about that training. We can always do more, but I will say, if you look at the number of hours that we spend training on mental health, and I'll put those hours up against any teacher, any social worker you want. Do we want to partner with people who people say are best to do that? I don't have a problem with that at all. I just need them to be available at 2 a.m. And the thing that we have above some of the people who want to help is that they don't want to be out at 2 a.m. And there are people right now who are studying psychology at UW or Edgewood, and they don't know that they're going to be working at 2 o'clock in the morning. And so we need to tell them, because if we want to go that way, I'm okay with it. We would love to have them out, but usually that doesn't happen. So we have to be well trained and we have to be prepared. We have an enormous amount of mental health calls. I do ride-alongs twice a month, and I will tell you that the majority of my time is spent watching officers convince people to go get help and treatment. And I think they do an excellent job doing that. But then once they're in the hospital, we have to watch them. And so that's 2 officers who are off the street at the hospital watching someone sleep or watching someone wait to get blood drawn. And so we do need more partnerships in that area where we can relinquish some of that over to other people who are best to handle
it. Thanks, John. Thank you, Chief, so much. It was so good to have you here. Thanks. You talk a lot about partnerships. Could you talk a little bit about the partnership between your department and the school district?
Sure. So that's an ongoing partnership. We meet with them every Thursday to talk about school safety. We've lost a little bit, I think, in communication by not having the I call them school resource officers in the school. That was an amazing way to communicate what's going on in the community, in the neighborhoods, and how that may affect the schools. By the school system's own admission in the paper, they say that things start in the community and then sometimes spill over at school. I don't know that to be true, but if that is true, it would be nice to be able to communicate that with them. I will tell you that I have a great relationship with Dr. Jenkins. Dr. Jenkins and I, he can call me anytime, I can call him anytime, and we work together. We're actually getting ready to announce a partnership on recruiting. And so we're going to be partnering together, trying to recruit people together. They have some of the same issues that we have with minority recruiting. And so we talked about that. I think he's a good leader. I think he values public safety. And so we just hope that he gets the support that he needs in order to increase public safety. So I think there may be an underlying thing in there. So I'll just go ahead and put it out there. I do support school resource officers. I was a school resource officer during the course of my career for about 3 years. My brother is a school resource officer right now at a high school down in Durham, North Carolina. Again, we talked about identity. If you listen to the people who do not want school resource officers and you talk about, and they tell you why, I'll say, yeah, I agree with that. If that's the identity of a police officer. If a police officer, according to your definition, is walking through schools looking for people to put in jail, then I agree with that. But I don't think that's the identity of a school resource officer. It wasn't my identity, and it's certainly not the identity of my brother.
Hello there. Eli with the Campus Area Neighborhood Association. I was sort of wondering in terms of how officers are trained to interview people who had just experienced violence of any sort. Like, how does that training look like? And what is expected, I guess? Yeah,
well, there's 2 levels of interviewing people who have just experienced trauma. There's the officer level where they're trained to get the basic information that we need to either effect arrests and or to determine where that suspect may be. But then the detectives are a little bit different. And so sometimes we have to use third party interviewers, especially if it's a child. I did that when I was a juvenile victim detective. We had, they're called forensic interviewers. And so they kind of know the questions to ask to get the answer that you need with the least amount of trauma for a child or a person. And I think that's probably the way to go. And I think that's what we do when we're interviewing children.
Chief, I have a question for you, and I'm going to put you on the spot.
Denied.
I don't have any problem putting you on the spot.
I know.
The sheriff and I wants to know who is the greatest college football team in the country and who is the greatest NFL football team in the country. Am I right, Sheriff?
Need me to protect you here? Need me to step in and protect you here?
I'm advising my attorney who's to the left of me.
He's guilty. Plead the fifth. Do not answer that.
Yeah. Of course, it has to be the Badgers. That's my favorite team. And my favorite pro team is the Green Bay Packers. Let me tell you something, that Brett Favre, he's going to take us all the way this year. I'll tell you what, that guy's going to do well.
Got it. You did just fine.
Thank you.
You did just fine. Anybody else? Anything online? Oh, here we go.
Morning, Chief. Thanks so much for your time today and your service to the community. I run an organization called Free Bikes for Kids, and we get a lot of your recovered bicycles. So thank you for that. We've experienced a lot of requests, people who received our bicycles for free in May, and they had them stolen. So we've got a list right now of about a dozen students and adults who use their bicycles to get to school and work, who've had their bicycles stolen, and they need us to get them more bikes here right in the next week. Can you talk a little about the bike thefts, and are you seeing an actual uptick in that, or are we just hearing more about it? What's going on there?
You know, I actually don't have any data on bicycle thefts. I do know that in the downtown area, we've seen thefts of mopeds that have kind of just increased, and it's kind of interesting to me why that is. We normally don't see that. But I can probably get you that information a little later on. But I would say when we give people bikes, let's give them bikes and a bike lock, and let's make sure that we stamp the bike with a tag we can register that bike. That's something that we did in Greensboro. We actually had an officer, a community resource officer, who took that on as a problem-oriented policing project. And what he did was he said, you know what? We're going to make these little tags and you can register your bike. So on Saturdays, he would have like a bike rodeo, right? Where he'd set up cones and kids and their parents would come and they, put the little helmets on and go through the cones. And then he'd register their bikes. He'd put the stamp on them. And if they didn't have a lock, he'd give donated locks. And so that was part of his problem-oriented policing. It was very successful. And maybe we need to do that so we won't have so many bikes being stolen. I am. Let me know when I need to plead the fifth. Let me know. Okay.
Mine's going to be an easy question.
Okay.
So first, I want to thank you for partnering with us, the Rape Crisis Center, to do some of that training on that interviewing and just mental health training as a whole. But secondly, as a Dane County supervisor, one of the things that we're looking at are programs like the CARES program.
Mm-hmm.
Can you talk to me about what is it that this program needs to be more successful? And are there things that that those of us that are in government can be doing to expand, obviously beyond funds, but what is it that I don't know about this program?
So I'll say two things about the program. The first thing is when I ride with officers and I ask them about the CARES program, they absolutely love it. It is making a difference. And so, officers is two things we tend not to like: the way things are and change. And so when we changed to CARES, they liked it. And it's like, we're seeing, calls go down, we're seeing, less interaction. And so I think that the program should be expanded. And the second thing is I don't want to have to pay for it. And so, and that's just in the spirit of honesty. Last year, I lost some money out of my budget to fund an additional CARES van, even though the fire chief at the time said they weren't ready for expansion. He said, give us an opportunity to collect more data, which makes sense. Give me an opportunity to make an assessment. And still those that were in power decided to expand it with my money. So I don't, or our money, I don't have a problem with expanding it. I just know that my budget couldn't stand another hit. We're struggling as it is to meet some of the needs that I think that we want. We're trying to bring in new technology. We're trying to get grants and things of that nature. And the governor certainly has helped us out tremendously with that. But again, I don't think that we have the money to support it, but I think it should be expanded. All right.
You did it. You passed. Good job. Thank you so much again for taking your time to join us this morning and for your continued partnership with DMI. With that, I'd like to thank again all of our sponsors, Carlson Black, O'Callahan and Battenberg, Ho-Chunk Gaming Madison, State Bank of Cross Plains, TDS Telecom, JP Cullen, the Edgewater Hotel, and UW Health, Unity Point Health, Meritor, and Courts. We appreciate everybody attending today. Thank you so much. We made it through the rain. So now you can go about your day dry.